Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I am Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads. Hello, Alan.
How's it going?
It's going okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Busy?
Very busy.
Yeah.
It is always interesting.
That's a good word for
a
it.
father and a husband.
Okay.
And a son.
Yes.
And a friend.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in.
Sure.
Or that I live.
Multiple, we have to take multiple hats. That's what I was trying to say.
That's the best way to say it. No, I mean, overall things are great. It's just, work, school, life.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Yeah, that's what's going on.
How about you?
Yeah, same difference.
Let's talk about you for a second.
The way to divert the topic. I am in the same exact boat with the exception of the kids part.
Yeah.
I'm living the dude life, but work, personal relationships, just everything involved with that, especially work.
Right.
I mean, nothing wrong with it. There's a lot happening. Guy. It's a lot happening. Yeah. Teaching I've been doing. So a lot of stuff going on.
And yet we still find time to do Dudes to Dads.
This is the fun part.
This is the fun part. I know. And feeling good. That's the thing. It changes my state. I go from maybe, after work a little bit like, okay, a little sluggish to I'm on.
Yep.
I guess the mic goes on, the lights go on. As I'm on stage, I'm a performer.
Exactly.
Actually, I never thought I'd be a performer, but I guess you could.
No, it's strange to think that. Yeah.
But it does. It's like things kind of wake you up. You do that. Well, that was a fancy thing. Tony Robbins used to say that about changing your state.
Okay.
So, sitting up straight.
Yep.
Head up.
Yeah.
Breathe in. And it actually changes how you feel.
Sometimes smile.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Turns your whole mood around.
So we got an interesting topic, as always. I tried not to, it'd be bad to say, well, we have a really boring topic.
Really? You may want to tune out and go somewhere else.
There's way better podcasts than this.
Exactly.
Don't listen. Reverse psychology.
Yeah, exactly.
What to do when grandparents spoil your kids.
Yes. I was raised a lot by my grandparents, and I think they spoiled me in the healthy way because it wasn't too much, but I know I got a lot because I was an only kid at the time and I lived with my grandparents.
Well, so here's where the interesting part is. This is basically talking about when your grandparents, or let's say your parents, go over you.
Oh, okay.
And spoil your kids.
Yeah.
So it's one thing when you are raised by the grandparents.
Yeah, and that was a part-time thing, and then I lived with my mom as well. So
I mean, not to take away from that, but I'm saying what a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about is basically, you're trying to parent.
Yeah.
You're actively parenting in a certain way.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, grandparents come along. And they may do things that you don't agree with. This is not by the way, caveat or disclaimer, this is not, I'm not talking about my own situation. I mean, we all experience some things, but, I've been very lucky. Both my parents and my wife's parents, we all, have wonderful relationships.
That's good.
So, but there's certain things, of course, that you always look at and go, well, maybe that wasn't perfect, or maybe this wasn't how I would do it. And that happens with the best of them. I can say my mother, who was, the baby whisperer, there's things like, oh, that's how you're doing it, and like, okay, I guess that's a different way of doing it.
That makes sense.
But there are other times where you will look at the situation and be, and I know this from especially the meetup group where people have talked about situations that they've been in as a result of grandparents butting in or being overbearing or whatever. So that's something that I wanted to touch on. And, grandparents can spoil the children in very good ways. Attention, affection, just love and time and all those things. That's cool.
Sure.
But they can also spoil them in a negative way.
Okay.
And that can be gifts, letting them rule the house and, doing things that necessarily, like I said, the parents wouldn't agree with or don't like. So it was funny. My mom, Dr. Ellen, had a saying, and I think she had like a pillow that said this, and it said, "What happens at grandma's house stays at grandma's house."
That's hilarious.
So what's funny is I read up on this, and there's a woman, Susan Adcox. She's a grandparent expert Okay, and we'll link to her.
herself.
Yes.
Okay.
I hope so.
Yeah.
She's like a 20-year-old life coach.
Right.
Experienced so much in life that she's like,
feel the need to tell.
Is she a grandparent? No. I don't think she's even had kids. No, she actually was talking about how it teaches children to be a little deceitful and have a lack of respect for the parents. Now, I understand where my mom was going in the spirit of it.
Yeah. It's just kind of fun.
Right. In the spirit of it. But if you're talking literally, like you're saying, well, don't tell your parents.
Right. Yeah.
Like, don't tell your mom that this happened.
Yeah.
That's really undermining their authority.
Right.
Like, okay, I'm giving you this candy, but don't say anything.
Yeah. Right.
That's a different experience and a different sort of attitude that you're not going to want to have. So what are some ways that grandparents spoil kids? Let's learn a couple of them. First one. They'll buy inappropriate things.
Yes.
So, example, maybe you're not into weapons or something like that, and all of a sudden your kid gets a big toy gun.
Yes.
You're like, that would be an inappropriate toy.
Right.
Or something that's just not appropriate for their age. Like, it's a small kid and he gets a knife and you're just like, whoa, or,
a BB gun or something.
Or even maybe for a female and you're not into like frilly or teaching your daughter about like the pinkification of America or something. Yeah, and they're getting Barbie clothes and whatever.
You want more gender neutral and it's kind of like you said, going above you and doing what.
It doesn't matter. It's whatever. I mean, inappropriate is not necessarily inappropriate to society. It's inappropriate for what you are parenting about. Yeah. So that's one thing. Another thing, and this is probably the most common, I would say, is buying too many things. Mm-hmm. So. Just the idea is like there's just so much stuff. Like every time that they see the grandparents, they got to buy something or bring something or feel that way.
Yeah.
Now, I know that I'm going to enjoy being a grandparent. Like I can see that dynamic.
And do you foresee yourself buying a lot of stuff for your grandkids?
I could totally see it. Well, I don't know.
Spoiling them a little bit.
I don't know, but it's funny. As I was going through this, like I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally understand
because you get all the benefits of being a parent, but then you can just give them back.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was like being an uncle.
Yeah. You just swoop in.
Yeah. So buying too many things is definitely, an issue.
Yeah.
Outdoing the parents. So maybe a gift that's better than the parents would give. Like maybe at the holiday where like they have to outdo them.
Right.
And it's like it's on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, well, they have to love me the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just somebody who's like competitive or maybe a little their self-esteem's not as good.
Sure.
And so they feel they have to, to do that.
Yeah.
Buying expensive gifts.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going down on these are in the buy category.
Yeah.
These are all buying things. Expensive gifts like electronics, a phone,
yeah.
Whatever. And like, that's not something that we might agree with or we might want, for our kids.
Right.
It's totally different if you have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
But we're talking about situations where you're like, what the heck was that? Like,
you didn't give me that.
Right. Something that doesn't match the parents' values, which we kind of touched on. Maybe it's like a weapon or some of the material, maybe like a movie that you wouldn't agree with or something like that. Just something that kind of objects to something that you feel strongly about.
But this is interesting, and maybe you already are going to touch upon this, but I know I have an aunt that was a Jehovah's Witness, and then her kids, my cousins, my grandmother like kind of stepped in and was like, they're going to celebrate Christmas. I don't care. like she just told them straight out, I'm going to give them I'm going to give them presents. They're going to come over. They're going to have a dinner. Like, I don't want them missing out on this. And so it overstepped her boundaries. And I understand where my grandma's coming from because she wasn't raising her kid to be that way. But my aunt made a decision. Hey, I've become this, and we don't celebrate Christmas on this. We just have a standard day. And my grandma's like, yeah, no, that's not happening.
Yeah. Well, I think
this is some years ago.
We will touch on how to deal with something like that.
Okay.
Because that's a real issue.
Yeah.
Sure. And it's like you're putting the values that the mom is trying to teach.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with it or not.
Yeah.
How do you manage that and then it's coming from the grandparent perspective.
Right.
Like, how do you as the grandparent intervene if you feel something's not right?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's the weird thing. It's a little bit of a clash of the cultures at that moment. It wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't like everyone flew off the handle. I think my aunt just kind of accepted that. Okay, my mom's going to do this.
What was the end result? Is that they
the end result was that they
okay.
The rest
so they got to celebrate with her.
90% of the time they were doing their thing with their mom, and then that time.
So there was a compromise.
It was a compromise. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it was good. It was healthy. Yeah. I guess that was healthy in that regard. But
versus like. You're, the woman disowning her mom,
right? Yeah, I don't know
in the name of the religion. I mean, I'm saying that can happen in those kinds of situations.
No, and it could have been volatile, but I think both of them just kind of agreed that's what's going to happen.
Well, then I don't need to tell you that. And then something else: spending money on things that the parents feel is wasteful. Just like they don't need that.
Yeah.
Why do they need their 7th doll?
Right.
Or their 6th skateboard, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, a pair of shoes each day of the week. You don't need that's certain things you don't need.
Right. Yeah. We wear hand-me-downs.
Exactly.
No, and it's interesting because you think about then from the parent standpoint, not the grandparent standpoint, of what is it that bothers you about that? It's like that you feel like you didn't get something like that. There's got to be all the psychology about it, or you feel like you're trying to do something and then they're undermining it and not respectful of that. So there's probably an issue in that relationship already.
Sure.
Right. If the grandparents are overstepping in certain ways, that's probably not the first time that they've overstepped.
Right. Especially if you're getting upset at that moment.
Right.
Yeah. It's like a clash of values that was happening probably since you were a kid.
Yeah. So that was the buy category. Another one is food or consumption.
Yep.
So this is very, very, very common. Let me see. Let's have ice cream for dinner.
Thank goodness that my grandparents were not like
on
that.
a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Versus like, let's say, you have rules or regulations.
Sure.
Or even candy, same thing.
Well, and grandparents, I think inherently, you kind of touched upon this, they just want to spoil the kid. They're like, I want to give you everything. And of course, their own kids are like, you never did that with me. It's like,
right.
I think, not to quote Bill Cosby, but he was like saying that, like, he goes, grandparents, they're old, they're people that are trying to get into heaven.
Right.
So that's why they're so nice to everybody. They weren't like that when I was a kid.
Right.
And it's kind of is that, I mean, not saying that that's necessarily the case, but like, it's that. They've
already lived.
They've lived. They're like, right. I have enough money. I'm retired or whatever it is. I want to just treat those kids to whatever it is.
Well, and I think that was the spirit for my mom. She's passed, but that was her spirit in saying what happens at grandma's house, and she stays there. And so one of the things that she had said, because I recall getting, having like a disagreement about something.
Yeah. And
she was very tactful. I mean, it's like she was, not understanding of that.
Right,
So one of the things she explained to me or said, it's wonderful that and I don't even remember if this was at my house or in-laws or whatever, but there was some issue. And she said, if that's the memory, I think it was like candy or something.
Yeah.
If that's the memory that your child has and they associate a positive memory with the grandparent, don't try to knock it.
Don't disrupt it.
Don't disrupt it.
Yeah.
Unless it is a real big value problem.
Yeah.
And they're constantly doing something.
Yeah.
So that actually, that advice kind of backed me off a little bit because it was like, well, no, this is what happens in our house. This is what time we go to sleep. This is, that's how I lived, especially when I had the kids. And so I kind of understood and saying, you know what, that's the time, as long as it's then within boundaries, and we'll go over sort of how to go over that. Maybe that's just okay.
Right.
If the kids are really having a fun time and they are, those memories are positive because they were, in fact, I remember with my grandparents, I didn't see them a lot, but when I did, there was always a big candy jar.
Yeah.
It was like always like caramels and like that kind of stuff. And I remember that, if we traveled and we went and saw them, it's like, I remember always enjoying that.
Yeah.
But we didn't have candy in our house like that. Like we just weren't allowed to have that.
That was just a treat.
Right.
Yeah. When you go to that location.
And so I can understand that,
that
a little bit. So, another thing, like just other foods, pizza or fast food or something that depending on how you eat and how you do that.
Right.
So here's kind of what needs to be done. So this is kind of how you approach it.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that
sure.
a little bit. So, with anything, you sort of need to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Choose which items are important and which items are not.
Yep.
There's going to be some things that you're okay with. and some things that you might not be, but for the sake of not creating an argument, you might just have to shut up.
Yeah. Right.
That's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
And also be sure that it is a direct parent, grandparent with these discussions. It's not with the in-laws.
Yes.
So
I could see where that could be
right. So if you were married, you do not talk to your wife's in-laws about the issues you're having with them.
You talk to your wife about them and then have her talk to
correct.
them. Yeah.
Correct. That is always that is good advice with any member of the family.
Yeah.
Any members of the family. My mother also taught me that one.
Yeah.
It was a friend. I remember a friend of hers. The sister-in-law, or I mean, the daughter-in-law had come to them or something, and the whole family blew up, as a result of that. You just don't overstep that, because there's a thing called unconditional love when you're part of the family,
right?
Whereas when you're the in-law or whatever, you don't have that same right.
Yeah, you're not blood.
No matter how close your relationship is,
sure,
it's just not a good idea.
No, I agree.
So make sure that it is your significant other, that it's their parents that they talk to. Assuming that they have parents
right.
But either way, just don't do it. So the first thing is to define your expectations. So, and this is before you even talk to your parents, what's the role that you want them to play
right.
with the child rearing? Do you how important it is to you? And then have that talk before the child is even born. So, if whether you're pregnant and you say, here's how I would like this, here's what and then also too, what are your expectations as,
sure.
as a grandparent?
But there's some things you're not going to be able to come across until you get there. And you're
Correct.
like, oh, I didn't think about this.
Of course.
Like the candy thing or whatever those things are. The value system might not be there until you actually start rearing your kids a certain way. And
here's the caveat. If you have an issue or a type of parent, you as the adult have a grandparent that's not going to listen to you. There's going to be probably a time that if it keeps going, they're going to see a lot less of the grandchild.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make that threat, but we'll get to that.
Sure.
That's the difficult part with it, is they have to realize how much of an impact that can have.
Right.
Because you're the one who's ultimately in control of that relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
So the first one, define your expectations. The second one, set boundaries and rules. So explain the importance of them of respecting your rules. Saying, listen, I'm trying to instill these rules. And as an example, for the grandparent who buys gifts, it might mean saying, we don't use guns or have weapons in our house. I would appreciate you respecting that.
Right.
So if you think that they're going to go buy guns, you say, listen, we just don't do that in our house. Now, if the grandparent says, well, you guys are, ridiculous that you worry about, whatever that might be, you got a problem.
Yeah. And when I was your age, I was preparing a real gun.
Right. We shot at each other.
Yeah, exactly. With bullets for real.
So that's something. The third thing is respect their time and effort. So you have to realize and see, are your expectations realistic?
Right.
And I can look back and say, well, maybe mine weren't as realistic as I think.
Sure.
There's probably some things. And don't abuse the resource. So this is the respectfulness of the time. Don't abuse the resource. So don't ask them to drop whatever they're doing and interact or watch the child if that's what some of the relationship is about.
Right.
Where you're asking them for the favor of, hey, can you come over and watch them? Don't expect that, drop of a hat. They're like, yep, I got nothing else to do. Even if they don't.
Yeah. Right.
Because they often, sometimes they don't. They're retired. They're not, you're busy watching Family Feud.
Yeah.
You can't see the kid.
Yeah.
And that can happen. And in that same sort of spirit, number 4, make it a combination of fun time and babysitting time. So if you are lucky enough to have grandparents nearby, and that's part of some of the interaction is they actually watch the child, while you're either working or playing or doing whatever. And that's don't make that the only time they see the child.
Right.
Make it a combination of hey, we're doing this. I want you to come along.
Yeah.
And be mindful of that. Whereas it's not that you're always calling them up to watch the kid.
Exactly.
Only when you need something.
Yeah.
Hey, can you go, whatever. It's just, and that's something to grow on with all people.
Yeah, that's true.
You've got some friends, that like, that's the only reason they call you is, oh, can I use your truck to move?
Yeah. Or I want to talk about this problem.
Right.
It's like, okay.
You're the problem solver.
Yeah. What about the fun?
Right. So that's important. Number 5, show gratitude.
Yeah.
So be sure to thank them, provide positive reinforcement, let them know you appreciate their help, and that's something that's important. Everyone likes to be acknowledged in that way. And just like, what, I really, really appreciate you coming over and helping.
Right.
Or, watching the kid or whatever, they might have done. So if you have a difficult situation, like you had, we kind of touched on a couple.
Sure.
There's a couple different ways to do this. So the first one, it's funny, I just advised somebody who was having difficulty with a friend to use this approach. It's called the sandwich approach. And the sandwich approach is you say something positive, say something negative, and then say something positive.
Something positive, yeah.
So, gosh, you are so helpful when you come over. One of the things I wanted to just mention was that in our house, we don't like to have guns, but I really, really appreciate you spending the time with our kid, whatever that might be. So it's like positive, negative, positive.
Yeah.
The sandwich.
Right.
So
what if there's multiple things you have to make it like a double-decker sandwich?
Yeah. Good question. Double?
Double, yeah. Double cheeseburger, extra pickles.
I make it a different time.
Yeah. Yeah. You have the sandwich tomorrow.
One sandwich at a time.
This is roast beef.
The second thing is if it's still not working, remind him again. So thanks again for XYZ. But remember when we discussed this, I really need you to be mindful of blah, 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 blah.
Right, yeah.
And do that. If it happens again, it's not working. You say, when there's going to be a situation where they're going to help and maybe they ask, or maybe they say, hey, I was thinking of coming over, or can whatever come over to our house. Thanks for offering. Like this is a situation with the example I'm going to give is, let's say they're giving them junk food.
Yeah.
And you've asked them not to, and they still do it. You might say, you know what? Thanks for offering, but I really want him to be eating healthy. I'm just going to go ahead and bring him with me. Then maybe we'll, then maybe try again in a couple of days or weeks or whatever the frequency typically is. That's, I don't love that one because you're like taking it away and like sort of punishing them. So I think, and even in that sense, you've got to kind of evaluate and pick your battle in that sense. Like, if it is a nutritional type thing, and you often will say what not to do. It's the same thing with kids. You tell them what you can do.
Right.
So, it's saying like, hey, here's some things I would suggest to eat. I would love for them to have a sandwich. They can have chips. They can have a juice, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just making it up.
Sure.
But giving them ideas, and because sometimes they just don't know, right, not remember, or like, well, I don't know what he eats. This is what we have in my house. Yeah. So sometimes, like if it is food, you say, hey, like next weekend, I know that Timmy's going to come over. Hey, it'd be great if you had some cereal, this kind of cereal,
right,
or blah blah blah. If that's not possible, you know what? I'll just send that with him.
Yeah.
Because if the parent doesn't go shopping or doesn't want to shop or doesn't know how to shop, there's no excuse then.
Sure.
And you can give them the food that they're going to serve, if that's what the issue is.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things you can do. So, I think for every kind of the ending on this topic, like for every parent who complains about the grandparents spoiling their kids, there's parents who wish that their kids got more attention
from the grandparents
and be able to spend more time with them.
Right,
so that's another thing about being grateful, that if you do have grandparents that are nearby or interaction with the kids, value that, and really understanding that, that's something that not everybody has the ability to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And whether that's because they're they've passed, which, like in my case, my kids now have still grandparents in their lives, but like my mom has passed, it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you got to value that time, especially as they get much older and realize that, the time isn't forever.
Yeah.
And you want them to have those fond memories and stuff. So you got to kind of relax a little bit.
Sure.
About it.
No, it's interesting because like I grew up with one set of grandparents. My father's parents weren't alive when I was born. So I only knew my mother's parents, and now my grandma's passed and my grandfather's still alive. But I'm thinking about that too.
If you had kids.
If I had kids, like I had to have them right now.
Right.
And they know my grandfather's 95,
Right.
And then, but also to know my parents, they're far away. Like that my mother is separate from my father, for one.
Right.
And for two, my mother's also in a different state. And one of the furthest states from where we are right now. So that's something I'd have to think about.
Geographically,
positioning that. And I want my mom to be involved.
Right.
But it would be sporadic if we weren't in the same
extended stays.
Yeah, exactly. Summer vacation over there, that might be something to do,
Yeah, and I'm guessing in those situations, I mean, maybe it's different or maybe it's the same, but it's like you become a little bit more lax. It's like, oh, okay, I only see them once a year, or I only see them on a holiday, or I only see them, and so the spoiling, if you will, you might be a little bit
just that day. It's like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I wonder what the personality thing is where it bothers somebody and it doesn't bother other people.
Yeah.
Like as the parent, what is it about that? The control.
Yeah.
The self-acceptance.
Yeah.
There's something inside.
There is. It's like, you're not letting me be a parent. You're still almost treating me like I'm still the child.
Right.
Because you trust my judgment on this certain thing. And so I imagine that's where, that attitude comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Let's get some feedback. podcast@dudestodads.com is our email address. What else can they do?
Twitter @dudestodads. Facebook, dudestodads.com. No, dudestodads.com. Yeah.
Or just search Dudes to Dads.
Exactly. And then iTunes and Stitcher. Leave some reviews, subscribe, as you said in the previous
and also
episode.
YouTube.
And YouTube.
We've got some YouTube
subscribe
videos.
on both. Leave some comments on both. Hopefully they're all positive. But if you don't want to leave positive ones, at least be clever.
That's awesome. So on behalf of Alan and then myself, we will see you next week.
See you next week.